Good morning. I'm Tim O'Malley, CEO of Ateema Media and Marketing. Welcome to the Hospitality and Tourism Summit. The concierge profession has changed dramatically since COVID-19 hit, with some falling prey to furloughs and some expanding their roles. In this session, How Concierge Efficiently Elevate the Guest Experience, we'll explore the important but changing role of the concierge and what it will look like in the future. We'll dive into Kimpton Hotels, and see how they continue to elevate guest experiences through the concierge. We'll also explore how they get it done. We'll look into how these changes affect the companies that support hotel guests as well, because the changes are obviously impactful for everyone. So let me introduce my special guest, Nabil Moubayed, General Manager of the Kimpton Gray Hotel, Chicago. Nabil brings over 20 years of hotel industry experience to the Kimpton Gray Chicago, after receiving his master's degree from Cornell University's School of Hotel Administration. Prior to his current job, Nabil was a general manager at the award-winning Kimpton Hotel, Monaco, Chicago, and the Hotel Palomar in River North before becoming Midwest Director of Operations. Under Moubayed's leadership, the Gray has received honors that include 2019 Best Hotels in Chicago by US News and World Report. And I can say this personally, if you know Nabil, you know that he gives back to the community in a big way. Nabil was the chairman of the board of the Illinois Hotel and Lodging Association in 2016, and has served on the boards of the Chicago Loop Alliance, the Greater North Michigan Avenue Association, and on the Hospitality Advisory Board of Kendall College. In his spare time, Nabil is an avid golfer, soccer player, and enjoys traveling to new destinations with his wife and 2 children. A native of Canada, he has lived and worked in Cyprus, Nigeria, Singapore, and Germany, and is fluent in German and French. Welcome, Nabil.
Hey, how are you, Tim?
Great. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah, no, it's excellent to be here, even amidst these difficult times. But I think what you and I are going to talk about today is hopefully going to keep inspiring people that we can get through this.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to start. So
yeah.
I gave a little bit of a bio about your background, but is there anything in terms of your background you'd like to highlight before we get started as it relates to our conversation this morning?
I think maybe having the privilege of being raised and lived in different countries, it really made me acutely aware of what each city and country has to offer. And so when I think about travelers, whether they're local travelers or international travelers coming to Chicago, I always think about what would they like to see or experience that's, slightly different perhaps, or slightly off the beaten path. And we'll explore that probably a little bit later in this conversation. But, a lot of people don't always just want the most obvious recommendations out there. And so I always felt when I was working with, different companies or when I was in different parts of the world that exploring what locals used to do, like I always said, where do you guys like to eat, or where do you like to hang out? What neighborhoods are cool? That to me was more authentic than perhaps sort of what the traditional touristy spots are in each city. So I really took that from every destination that I was working or traveling to.
Yeah, it's interesting. You highlight, you always have sort of two camps when it comes to two obvious camps when it comes to travel and visitors. One is the sort of when in Rome mentality, which is if I'm in Chicago, I have to see these places. But there's a whole lot of people that want to also get into the neighborhoods and see what the locals are seeing. So yeah, that's a really good point. So one of the things about our conversation I felt as we talked about in our prep for this is that there's some perceptions about where concierge fit in the hotel world. And so I thought I'd start by asking you if you can give us a little bit about where Kimpton Hotels in general fall within the spectrum of hotels overall.
Yeah, no, good question. I think we've evolved as a brand. And when I joined 17 years ago, we were probably around 20 hotels, and we were more, very historic buildings, smaller hotels, quirky, whimsical. And, I think the traditional, what you would consider a boutique hotel at the time.
Sure.
I think that word and that sort of era of hotels became overused so that you could almost just slap a name on a building and do a couple of fun little things and you would think you're a boutique hotel. So as we evolved, we also evolved in our offerings to our guests. So we started to still rehab mostly old buildings, but much more elevated design and much more local in flavor. And so we would consider ourselves now more upper upscale luxury lifestyle type of properties, but still have a very personalized service. And we still have a great belief in paying homage to our local neighborhoods and to our local areas. So I would say, some people call it hyper local. Some people would call it, really focusing on what makes your part of town sort of unique and special and what makes it click. And we really spent a lot of time investigating that and trying to make the look and feel of our hotel match where we are. So for example, I'm at the Kimpton Gray Hotel today, which is in the middle of the financial district. So a lot of what you see behind me and around me is rich, plush, feels very sort of catering to that slightly more upscale client that typically would come through the doors here.
Yeah, I'd love to come over and share a bourbon with you this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm here, ready for you.
So one of the things that struck me about our conversations is you've got a great sense of optimism about our situation and a great sort of regard for helping this industry get through this tough situation that we're in. And so I thought I'd dig in on that a little bit and start by asking, how's business at the hotel?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think we've got through probably the toughest period, which was April, May, and June, where, back to your comment, we did stay optimistic and we wanted to be one of the hotels that gave some type of opportunity for, even if it was one or two staff members to be here. We, like everybody else, had to unfortunately lay off a lot of people. And so we wanted to be one of those businesses that stayed open. And, it really was about being responsive to our clients too, because there's so many people that were worried about, what would happen with my wedding? What would happen with my social event that I've planned? Lots of conferences got canceled, as you know. So, yeah. For us, it was about business. The first couple of months we knew was going to be terrible, but we had to claw our way through it. The kind of rhythm we're in right now in the city is that, we just finished summer, and summer was typically, weekends were pretty busy, and during the week was kind of slower. So we probably settled in around 10 to 20% occupancy at most for the month. But weekends were typically the busiest period. So we had to reshuffle how we do business in terms of how we're staffing, who gets to work when, and how many people were actually working. And, we ended up going from a staff of 10 people when we first went through this to we're about 30 people right now. So it's given some, we're able to employ some people, which is key to me. And we're working hard to rebook a lot of business for next year. 2021 is shaping up relatively well in terms of weddings and social business. And now, as you know, we're just waiting for conventions and business travelers to come back. That's the bread and butter of most hotels downtown, as well as your services that you provide, because everybody wants to go to great restaurants and see a unique show, perhaps go to a sporting event. And so we're waiting for that type of business to come back so that we can then obviously fill our hotels with, the 50% of the business that's missing.
Yeah. Amen to that, by the way.
Yeah.
So obviously throughout the city, there's been many concierges that have been furloughed, and you decided to maintain much of your concierge team. Can you tell us what sort of went through your mind as you were planning?
Yeah, definitely. So, when we were going through who we would keep on for our staff, one of the big things that I really wanted to hone in on was maintaining a certain level of guest service that no matter who your guests are, because no doubt the demographic of our guests changed over this last few months. They're still coming to your hotel for an experience, and they're still coming to your city for an experience. And I thought to myself, well, if they're going to really, it doesn't matter if they're paying $100 or $300 or $500. From my perspective, if somebody is coming to my place, my hotel, to experience the city of Chicago or just this hotel, I thought it was very important that we have somebody around that could curate that experience for them. And as a brand, we've always done that. I mean, we've always been very cognizant of having concierge services be part of what we do. We're not at the upper, luxury peninsula type of sort of level where we only have a concierge that only does concierge services. Our concierges, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but they're multifaceted, so they can do more from our perspective than just be concierge. That's kind of what they have morphed into, and I know we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I felt it really important that we have the local expert around that could always help our guests curate services no matter where it is. We're in the city, and they're the best ones who know what's open, what's closed, when things are available, etc. So that was how my mindset went, and they work at the front desk. I mean, they're front desk agents, managers, and/or concierge.
So it's interesting. Your perspective is interesting in that, in my opinion, arguably, I mean, clearly we have less visitors, but arguably there's never been more of a need for information for visitors because there's been so many changes. So there's lots of businesses that have closed. Many have changed their offerings. Many have changed their staffs and their the folks that communicate with hotels and so forth. Many websites are not kept up to date. So it just has led to a great deal of confusion amongst Chicago's visitors regarding, what's open, what are they offering, who's keeping these safe, all that kind of information. So there's just a lot of moving pieces right now. So I see what you decided as being a smart way to handle it from the standpoint of this is a real issue, as is the financial issues and the operational issues. It seems like you've struck quite a balance. Yeah.
And I think, one of the things is that we're only as good as the information that we get. So, if I can use the resources around me, one is the concierge themselves, the actual physical person who knows people in the industry, knows the people in the restaurants that we're talking about, knows the people at the attractions, and can get up-to-date information. But even using, Concierge Preferred Magazine, or using the websites and using resources that are up-to-date themselves for us to then be able to have real-time information for our guests. I mean, everybody's using QR codes nowadays, right? So the QR codes link you to somebody's website or link you to some type of information that helps you, whether it's a menu or hours of operation or directions on how to get somewhere. And if that is not updated, then, what's the point? And so part of what our concierge Bobby does is spend a lot of time updating those pieces of information and finding a way to make sure that our guests get that information real time. So whether it's in a pre-arrival email, QR codes that are available at the front desk that people can just take a picture of. And so it's all about information, and we're only as good about as the information that we get.
Well, it's interesting because just like your business and our business, it's a smaller team for obvious and unfortunate reasons. These businesses, the attractions and restaurants, all these other types of businesses that serve Chicago's guests are typically understaffed and struggling with the same issues. So there's definitely a disconnect there, and we're trying to do what we can. In fact, we're launching a new service after the summit where businesses can fill out a form on a weekly basis that will be distributed to the concierge and guest services folks at the hotels, so they can see directly what the changes are in real time. We could not think of a better way, given the shortage of folks on sort of both sides. Trying to make it easy and focus on how can we make the guest experience better by making sure that those that serve our guests directly have the right information.
Yeah, that's excellent.
So as we talk about this, and we're talking about sort of different levels of hotels, do you have to be a luxury hotel model to afford a concierge, or is it Is it a balance of having concierge do other things? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, again, as a company, Kimpton, we've always had the belief that we, because of our price point, which is still upper upscale, $250 to $300 range, that's a decent price point. But even at that price point, we can't just afford to have a concierge desk on its own. So we've always worked a model where we have our concierge be able to do other things. So typically they're stationed at the front desk. They're going to be able to check people in and out. They're going to sometimes have to run shifts. They're going to have to deal with tough guests. They're going to have to deal with what we talk about, like the minutia of running a daily operation, right? And then the fun stuff that they get to do is the stuff that we just talked about, offering different things to guests that is a unique experience. How do you curate a traveling 3-day program for a guest that's visiting Chicago for the first time? That's sort of the fun part of their job. But we couldn't afford just to have a person sitting alone at a desk as a concierge. It has never been a model that works for us. And what I like about that, Tim, actually, is when you see a concierge working the front desk and talking to guests and giving them the experience, our other guest service agents that are working with them overhear that, and they actually get to chime in themselves at times, say, oh, I live in this area and this is a really great local restaurant that I go to, and they become part of the conversation, and that's how they learn as well. So a lot of times our concierge that we then hire on are front desk agents who move into that concierge piece, but there's still going to be folks that work at the front desk. And then sometimes you get to elevate, you get to be a guest services or like Bobby, who's our guest services manager, was, a concierge front desk agent for a long time, but he's worked his way up to be one of the best concierges in the city and has such a great reputation. And he did that through a lot of hard work. And he's put together some amazing programs for our guests and for us as a company. So I'm really proud of him.
So one of the things that struck me in our conversation was what inspired me really was you and are encouraging your team to say, let's be the ones that help the industry out of this. Let's continue to inspire. Let's continue to create and innovate and so forth. And you mentioned a couple examples. You mentioned Bobby. If you could just give us a little bit of some of the things that you've done since COVID to try and enhance the guest experience and how you've leveraged, Bobby, who does your concierge services and so forth. Maybe just give us a little community on that.
I would tell you my favorite example is what we call a concierge cocktail. So in a lot of hotels, room service was, stopped. We don't have mini bars in the room because, again, too much contact for guests to be touching stuff, and you're not sure who's touched it last. So all the mini bars were removed from the room. And so we saw that there was an emptiness, a void in a cocktail, like a real cocktail, because for a long time, bars were closed, restaurants were closed, right? So there was no guests were coming in, and they were looking for a slightly elevated experience in their drink. So not just beer or wine.
Right.
And, sometimes you just get your own little vodka or bourbon or something, but it's not quite what you're looking for. So Bobby, with his partners from Pernod Ricard, put together a concierge cocktail program. And what we did over the last few months is we sat down together and we created 2 different cocktails, one made from vodka base and one made from a bourbon base. And it's called the Concierge Cocktail, and we sell them, and we actually bottled them and put them together here at the property, and they have a really cool label, and we sell them for $10 each, and we've gone through, I think, 600 or 700 of them, and we sell them to our guests, and other people can come in and pick them up on their way home to take as a great cocktail after work. And from each sale, we donate $1. Sorry, I'm going to make sure I look at my notes here to get the naming right. So we donate $1 to the Chicago Concierge Hotel Association Assistance Fund. So we've already raised about $600 or $700 for that fund, and that's to help those concierges who are not working right now. And Bobby's spearheading that donation drive. And what it did is it created an opportunity for him to use his contacts locally. It created, it was a great PR piece for us. It's also a great branding piece for us because it
Sure.
stays hyper local, and it's a great tasting cocktail. So it actually filled a void that our guests had, a need that our guests had that we weren't able to fill. So it kind of hit all 3, 4 buttons that we're looking for. And the biggest part I'm proud of for him is that he used it as a way to also give back to the community, which is always an important piece.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for businesses that serve your guests? So some of the restaurants and attractions and so forth that we referred to earlier?
Yeah. You know, I think the one piece that we did talk about is the information piece. So making sure that all of your websites or your contact information is as updated as possible, because it really is frustrating for us and our guests if we're recommending somewhere and then you go there and it's closed. So that would probably be number one, is to make sure that all the information that you have available on your websites is up to date and accurate. And then also, I think a lot of people are looking for contactless type of experiences. So how are you in your own business ensuring guests that they will be safe when they do come and visit you, whether it's you know, social distancing of tables, or having, you know, masks available for people, having sanitizer obviously, and then leading by example, right? So if I'm working the front desk here, I'm obviously going to wear a mask. I'm obviously going to be respectful of what's needed to be done to keep our employees safe and our guests safe. And if you let those standards slip even just a little bit, you know, people notice that. And so I would say be very mindful of how you are leading your teams and what kind of information you're sending out there to the public.
That's really good insight. We have a couple of sessions that we're exploring just that. We have one for hotels, a session that we're doing that Michael Jacobson, who you know, is running. And we also have another one on Friday morning from GBAC, the organization that in fact just sort of blessed McCormick Place with their designation. So that was sort of a big deal because they look at process, they look at how an organization keeps people safe and how they keep it clean and all these. It's an in-depth process that they apply, and it sort of a big deal for McCormick Place to get it.
Yeah.
It also speaks to what we'll see there in the future, like what are these big shows and big conventions going to look like when they return next year, you know? So that's sort of great insight and in a good way for me to tease a couple other sessions during the summit. So listen, as we're winding down, what do you think the future looks like for concierge services?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, I truly believe the path we were on, that I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we saw most concierge services starting to lean towards creating authentic local experiences, as opposed to, you know, we talked about it at the start of this segment, but, you know, most people know where to go if they have to be in Chicago and see, you know, the must-see sites, whether it's a you know, Willis Tower experience or a Navy Pier experience or a Art Institute experience, and they know where to go and get those, or a riverboat tour. Those are all excellent Chicago experiences. So sometimes it depends on how much time you have and what you want to see, who you're with, you know, if it's a family or a business travel type of trip. But I still believe right now, most people are leaning towards finding authentic experiences that are local in neighborhoods. And, you know, one of the things about that in this environment that we're in is that as a concierge, or even as just folks giving advice on where to go during these times, is that you have to be cautious about where you're sending people and what time of day it is, and how you get there. Do you take local transportation? Do you take an Uber? Do you take a taxi, etc.? Because, you know, let's be honest, there's going to be times when maybe that neighborhood is not the safest at times, or, you know, you should only go there during the weekend when there's more people around. Whatever that is, you know, I think it's important that the concierge is aware of that. And that's why I still believe that the power of people talking to people and having human interaction is above all going to prevail as we keep going. So I think the future for concierge services is as relevant as it's always been. I personally think, based on how we do business, the concierge is going to he's going to have to be a little bit more malleable, if that's the right word, or flexible to do other things, so they can be more valuable perhaps for the business, and can work some other shifts that maybe they're not used to working. But still, at heart, if you're a concierge, you're going to sell your city because you love it, and you have those true connections that most people don't have, and that's what guests are looking for.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, I think one of the key words you said there was authentic, and you don't know what's authentic when you look at an app, for example.
Right. Right.
You don't know that it's going to connect with your needs if you're just simply looking at an app. And so, for concierge, the value they bring is really dialing in what it is that a visitor really wants, and directing them in the right to the right places, which is, you can do that with some sense of confidence, certainly that you don't get by just looking at an online listing, for example. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And it'll be interesting too, because as this comes back, are people going to be more, are people going to be more interested in getting information directly from people, from the standpoint of we will have been, quarantined for a while to some degree. And I think there's some level of higher interest in getting back to being with people, as a result.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how that works out. But Nabil, as we close here, any message, anything you'd like to say about the Gray for our viewers out there?
Well, I mean, the Gray, we're basically in the heart of the financial district right now. So, we're working hard just to stay open, and we're working hard to make sure we have some good offerings for our guests when they come to visit. And Baleo, our rooftop, is open Wednesday through Saturday nights. It's a fun experience on the top of the hotel with a retractable roof, which is still fun now before the winter sets in. But ultimately, really my message to everyone is, look, let's stay positive. We know this is going to go away at some point. Maybe not go away the way we wanted to, as quickly as we wanted to, but we will be needed. We are a vital part of the entire economy, not only in the state of Illinois and in Chicago, but obviously around the world. And people love Chicago. They want to visit Chicago. And I want to be one of the hotels that stays open to welcome people back. And, for me, really, I want my staff back. I miss the staff that we have, and I miss the people that were working here. So working hard to get more business in so we can employ more people and get back to the good days that we had. So Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be part of the show.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you, Nabil. You're one of the great leaders in our industry in Chicago. So I really appreciate your time and your optimism. Definitely inspiring at a time where we can all use some inspiration, your creativity, innovation, and your commitment to your team. So thank you. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed our conversation here, and please enjoy the rest of the summit. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks.